The news this week from across the Atlantic has shocked American Jewry. Over 170 Jewish graves were desecrated in Philadelphia, St. Louis, and in Buffalo, Upper New York. It's led to fears of a rise of Jew hatred in the United States. At Mount Carmel Jewish Cemetery in Philadelphia, more than 100 Jewish tombs were vandalized, with Nazi swastikas sprayed over many of them. This has caused deep concern and distress to many Jewish families of the loved ones buried there. In Buffalo, at least 11 cars and an apartment building were targeted with anti-Jewish slogans and swastikas painted on them, designed to cause maximum offense. To make matters worse for American Jews, this year there has been more than 30 Jewish community organizations and 70 schools have received phone calls with bomb threats. The virus of Jew hatred has now spread to the free world. We have, over the past decade, seen many attacks on Jewish graves on the continent of Europe, but not in the United States of America. Historically, the US has not witnessed anywhere near the same degree of anti-Semitism in comparison to Europe's checkered past when it comes to attacks on the Jews. For centuries, the United States of America has been a haven for Jewish people escaping from persecution in Europe. Ever since the US declared its independence from British colonial rule in 1777 and fought a revolution to gain their freedom, the Jewish people have been integrated into American society. America's first president, George Washington, held the wealthy American Jews to thank for helping to finance his military campaign against the British. He rewarded the Jewish community by appointing leading members to his cabinet. The Jewish people were given prominent positions in US politics and society. It was not until the 1880s that the United States would witness the mass wave of Jewish migration from Russia and Eastern Europe, with the beginning of the violent pogroms. The attacks on the ancient Jewish communities in Russia and in Eastern Europe by Tsarist Russia made many Jews think whether they had a future in Europe. The famous musical and film Fiddler on the Roof is set in this era. It tells the story of the political and social changes that had occurred in Russia and Eastern Europe. This created a climate of political uncertainty in which the Jews were used as a scapegoat to blame for its social ills. This led to violent attacks against the Jewish communities in Imperial Russia. In the play, the main character, the lovable Tevi, was forced to leave Europe to decide to build a new life for himself and his family in America. The Jewish community left Russia and Eastern Europe in their droves and boarded ships headed for New York City. When they saw the Statue of Liberty, they knew they were about to enter the land of the free, where they could practice their Jewish faith without the fear of reprisals. In this new society, Jews were free and flourished and played their part in making America the world power it is today. It was the Wall Street crash of 1929 that we saw the ugly return of Jew hatred, as many American Jews were blamed for the economic crash that led to the Great Depression of the 1930s. At the same time, we witnessed the rise of Nazism and fascism in Europe and increasing attacks on the Jewish community in Germany. The US government did very little to protect Europe's beleaguered Jewish community. One of the saddest and most shameful episodes in America's history was the refusal to allow the passenger ship SS St. Louis, which was carrying hundreds of Jewish people who were trying to escape Nazi oppression, to port in one of America's harbors. The ship's Jewish passengers were denied admission to the United States, and they were also not allowed to go to Cuba. They had to return to Nazi Germany, where the majority would later perish in the Nazi gas chambers. In the boom years in America after the Second World War, American Jewry flourished financially and culturally in the United States, and America played a huge role in the re-establishment of the State of Israel in May 1948. America, in its new position as a world superpower, would now be Israel's main ally and protector on the world stage. Culturally, America has embraced its Jewish community with Hollywood actors like Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller, who have not been afraid to promote their Jewish identity in their films and characters. The US comedy hit series Friends featured Monica and Ross, who identified themselves as being Jewish and observed Jewish holidays. This makes the recent attacks on Jewish cemeteries and bomb threats against Jewish organizations and schools so shocking, as it indicates a significant change in the climate of American society, paving the way for a new rise of anti-Semitism. Malcolm Hoenlein, the head of the Conference for Presidents of American Jewish Organizations, the umbrella organization for American Jewry, said in an interview with the Times of Israel this week on the rise of Jew hatred in the US. Anti-Semitism is taking on a potentially pandemic dimensions globally, even in the US, and if left unchecked could grow into an immensely serious threat. I think we're seeing a pandemic in formation. I don't think it's here. I think America's situation is different from Europe, but the potential is there. We saw anti-Semitism in Britain, we saw it in France, and now we're seeing it everywhere. Look at the large number of instances in Germany, Scandinavia, and other parts of the world, and now see in America swastikas being painted, other expressions such as phone threats or aggression against kids on campuses. So it spreads. It's not isolated to one geographical locale. It's like a virus that spreads. All you do is declare it for what it is, Hoenlein said in an interview, and he went on to call for a global summit to confront the rise in anti-Semitism. The reason why the desecration of Jewish cemeteries and bomb threats made to Jewish organizations and schools has caused so much pain to American Jewry is because it invokes memories of the Holocaust. It reminds the Jewish people of the horror of what happened in Europe over 70 years ago with the Nazis. On the 8th and the 9th of November 1938, across Germany, Jewish graves were vandalized, along with synagogues burnt down, and Jewish businesses attacked by Nazi mobs, known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. During the Second World War, the Nazis would destroy Jewish tombs in Poland, Germany, Czechoslovakia, and Greece. It is so sad to think that many of these Jewish gravestones that were deliberately damaged would have belonged to survivors of the Holocaust, who had to endure incredible wickedness at the hands of the Nazis. They fled Europe for America to escape the painful memories, to make a new life for themselves in the land of the free. Now, even in their death, they cannot escape the hatred against God's chosen people. There can be no doubt that there has been a rise in religious and racial tensions in the United States, and that American Jewry is extremely concerned about their future. This has led many prominent Jewish leaders to express their disappointment in the new US president's slowness to speak out on this issue and ease their fears. President Trump strangely did not mention the Jewish people during his Holocaust Remembrance Day speech. He also angrily snapped at a Jewish Orthodox news reporter who asked him what his administration was doing to confront the rise in anti-Semitism. Donald Trump cannot in any way be accused of being anti-Semitic because of his strong support for Israel and his daughter Ivanka being Jewish, but he should have been quicker to respond to the community's fears. And on Monday, President Donald Trump did speak out against the rise of anti-Semitism.
The anti-Semitic threats targeting our Jewish community and community centers are horrible and are painful, and a very sad reminder of the work that still must be done to root out hate and prejudice and evil.
Mike Pence, the Vice President, deserves a lot of credit for reaching out to America's Jewish community and confronting Jew hatred by visiting Dachau concentration camp in Germany, where the Holocaust survivor, his wife and daughter, and placed a wreath beneath the memorial at the center of the camp. This was followed by an unannounced visit to a Jewish cemetery in St. Louis that was vandalized. He got his hands dirty and helped to repair the sacred graveyard. He picked up a megaphone to speak up against anti-Semitism.
There is no place in America for hatred or acts of prejudice or violence or anti-Semitism. I must tell you, the people of Missouri are inspiring the nation by your love and care for this place, for the Jewish community in Missouri, and I want to thank you for that inspiration, for showing the world what America is really all about.
In the United States, the Jewish community has been assimilated into American society, so the arrival of the virus of Jew hatred to the land of the free has come as a great shock. It's not surprising that many in the community are feeling fearful in the present political climate. Christian Zionists need to follow the lead of US Vice President Mike Pence in befriending the Jewish people and confronting the rise of Jew hatred. History teaches us that when we see a rise in anti-Semitism, then we should all be concerned, because it means that something is deeply wrong in society and that perilous times ahead are coming. But could these attacks against the Jewish people in the United States be a warning from the God of Israel that he wants his people to return home? Is he permitting this rise of Jew hatred to make American Jews think that they need to be in the promised land in the Middle East? In the coming years, we could witness the biggest wave of Jewish aliyah to Israel in history, as the hunters have been sent out. This leads us to ask, are we now witnessing the unfolding prophetic events described in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 16, verse 16 in the Bible? Behold, I will send for many fishermen, says the Lord, and they shall fish them. And afterwards I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. We need to prepare ourselves for the season of the hunters, both spiritually and practically, to stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters in these dark and dangerous times, as the virus of Jew hatred continues to grow across the globe.